Hello and welcome to Sliders and Wings, a podcast about the TV show Sliders
and the TV show Wings
and all the other forgotten TV shows of the 90s.
I'm Valerie Temple.
And I'm Rachel Cox.
What's up, Rachel?
Oh, I want to tell you something stupid.
Hit me with it.
Okay, so have you heard of the Percy Jackson series?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's basically trying to mine every little ounce they can get out of the Greek mythology source material. Percy Jackson is Poseidon's son, and he discovers that he's a half-blood and that there's this whole society of half-bloods and they're in danger all the time because monsters are always trying to kill them and stuff. I've been reading it to Oscar because he likes Greek mythology, but the stupidest part of the whole thing is that when he discovers that he's a half-blood, he realizes that his whole life he thought he was dyslexic, but it turns out it's because the only language his body wants to be able to read is ancient Greek.
No.
All the half-bloods are basically dyslexic because English is not natural for them. Ancient Greek is natural. That was when I had to put the book down for a second.
That just sounds like something to make kids feel better. I don't think that's going to work out in real life. Someone actually suffering from dyslexia. Maybe I'll just try ancient Greek. That'll be easy for me.
There are all these podcasts, Greek myths for kids. And I had a book when I was a kid, Greek myths for kids, but they're the bloodiest, most disgusting things you could read. I mean, they're more violent and have more sex in them than Grimm's fairy tales.
I think that's why all kids go through a Greek mythology phase, because there is stuff happening.
Titillating.
It's like a soap opera for kids. This guy's doing this guy's tying this guy to a rock.
Yeah, it's gory. So our show tonight is The Ben Stiller Show.
Hi, I'm Ben Stiller. Welcome to the show. I guess you're wondering who I am and what the show's about. Well, I don't know. I've never really had a show before. This is my first time. It's a comedy thing. You know, we do lots of little funny films, hopefully funny. I don't know, we got to start it up. So anybody have any ideas on how to start the show? Anybody have anything that...
I don't...
Bruce?
It's not an idea.
Bruce, one of the writers.
Yeah, it's not an idea so much as a concept.
Okay.
One of the writers comes up to you at the beginning and there's an exchange and something, funny happens and, I can work this out. I mean, I don't have the exact beats.
You mean kind of like what you're doing right now with me, right here?
It's sort of a humorous variation.
Yeah, I would work on it some more.
If you think there's something there...
Okay, we'll go back and work on it some more. Okay.
I'll work on this.
See, look at that. We just started out already. Something almost funny happened. So, anybody else? Any ideas on how to start?
Which only made 13 episodes. And it was kind of an important show in terms of the history of comedy because, it's like the first thing Ben Stiller did before he went on to be Zoolander. And I know he did other stuff, but...
Yeah, he was briefly on Saturday Night Live.
Oh my God, I forgot it.
He was on it for 4 episodes in 1989.
Did he take himself off?
It sounds like he quit. He got the gig because he had made some sort of, in the style of this show, parody mockumentary video, and it was like a big hit. They hired him based on the success of that. I think he thought he was going to be making a lot of films, like little short films, and they didn't really want him to do that. So I think he took himself out.
What a strange alternate timeline that would have been.
I know, right?
One of the notes I had about this is that it does seem like it's Saturday Night Live if Saturday Night Live only had 4 cast members and was therefore limited by how many types of impressions it could do.
And there's nobody laughing.
Yeah.
There's no audience.
Oh, and it's on at 7:30 across from 60 Minutes.
We are ready to laugh at 7:30.
I did watch all of the show. I remember when I was a kid that I was bummed that it was canceled. And then it has stayed in my memory. And even recently, I was probably watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, something that had Manson in it. And it reminded me of this sketch. So I looked up the sketch from Ben Stiller show where Manson is basically Lassie and he speaks in his like crazy Manson talk. He runs to say, Jimmy's fallen into the well, but he says it in like a crazy Manson talk. And they're like, what is that, Manson? What boy?
Right, that's Bob Odenkirk.
He does the Manson impression. I mean, that's basically his only one. Ben Stiller does Bruce Springsteen.
Tom Cruise, of course.
Tom Cruise, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Bono. He did Bono in the first episode.
For every single one, he's wearing a prosthetic nose, even though his nose is already so big. I think it's kind of to change the shape of it.
He's doing a lot with makeup.
Benso shows a sketch comedy series. This is confusing. It aired on MTV from 1990 to 1991, and then on Fox from September 27th, 1992 to January 17th, 1993.
Yeah, I had to dig into that. What it sounded like, and I could be totally wrong, there was a Ben Stiller show on MTV that only ran for a season, but it was not exactly a show. It was sketches that played between music videos. I could think kind of how Pete and Pete started like that, where it wasn't a full show. It was little scenes that they just stuck in wherever. And then they didn't continue on with that at MTV, but for some reason Fox was like, bring it on over here and you can make like a full show.
I guess that explains his love of interstitials.
Yes.
That's the main problem with the show, is that half of it, so it's like 22 minutes after commercials, and then half of that is sketches, and then the other half is just him talking to some, it seems like they're like his friends or his parents' friends are all the cameos.
There are a lot of them.
Well, and there's so many cameos that cross over to other shows we've done. So they had Rob Morrow, and then there are all these jokes about how Ben Stiller had tried out for Northern Exposure, but he didn't get it.
There's Gary Shandling, and the sort of running gag for those interstitials is that Gary Shandling was tricked to be on this show.
Oh my God, Sarah Jessica Parker is one of them.
That's a really funny one. Because the premise is that Ben has a big crush on her and she could give two shits about him. So he's like, yeah, I'm taking you on a picnic. We're having champagne in the woods. No other cast members. And she's like, wait, do you do this with all of your guests? He's like, sure.
The basic premise of all the interstitials is that he's a loser and the show sucks and no one wants to watch it.
Which I also think might have been the big problem with the show. It's so Gen X. It's such a Gen X sensibility. It's too self-deprecating.
Yeah.
Because from episode 1, they're like, this show sucks. And they're making fun of their own sketches. The cast is calling what they're doing lame. It's hard to become a fan of something that the makers of the show are also dragging. They're like, ugh, yuck.
And there's a spin-off, The Andy Dick Show. Why would they do it again?
I don't know. The early days of Fox was the Wild Wild West. They were trying anything.
After cancellation, the series won the 1993 Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing in a Variety of Music Program. So I remember it very fondly, and then going back and watching it, I was very excited for the first couple episodes, and then it did get a little bit
monotonous.
Monotonous. Yeah. There's just certain over-reliance on impressions, and then Janeane Garofalo doesn't do any impressions. She's just kind of hanging around, so then like it's just very male-heavy because she's just not given much to do. And then episode 9, suddenly there's this busty gal there. Did you watch it all?
Yeah, I watched it all.
She was in the aerobics video, but I thought maybe they were trying to bring her on for a little TNA or something.
Jean Triplehorn also showed up in a parody of the Monkees called The Grungies.
The Grungies. Greg said he thought the interstitials were actually done on 9mm. What say you?
You mean 8mm?
Yes. 6, 9, 8, whatever.
Doesn't matter. I don't know. I think it was actually filmed. I would doubt that it was 8mm because that would just be much harder to blow up and transfer. I would think they would probably used actual film and not video.
That's very 90s though. 70s retro film look. Judd Apatow was the co-creator.
And I think this was the beginning of his career too. The only thing that Judd Apatow had done prior to this was produce a couple Tom Arnold comedy specials. There's
like inklings of Mr. Show in it. Tonally, the things that weren't reliant on impressions seemed like they had that Mr. Show sense of humor.
My favorite sketches were the ones that weren't impression heavy. I mean, one of my favorites was the one about Yakov Smirnoff. Yes. So I guess that does rely on an impression, but...
One of my favorites is the B- time travel. Janeane Garofalo is a student who goes back in time for whatever reason. But then George Washington's like, what's going to happen? Why am I crossing the Delaware? She's like, I don't know. You have wooden teeth. He goes, I know I have wooden teeth. Tell me the date. When can I expect the attack? She's like, I don't know.
December 14th, 1941, a day that will live. Oh, wait, that's not right.
That's like how anyone would be if they went back in time and someone wanted details. Like, oh, great, you know how to make a microchip for a computer?
No. I truly can't help you. I don't even have basic survival skills. So I was writing down the sketches and putting check marks next to the ones that really made me laugh, because that was another thing about the show, was that it was generally funny, but I don't think it was laugh out loud funny. If you think back about sketch comedy shows of this era, I don't think it was super funny in comparison to In Living Color.
Amish Studs was funny.
Amish Studs was funny.
Another callback to one of our other episodes. And then they have a parody of all the Aaron Spelling shows, but they call it Melrose Heights 90210-4216 or something. And Ben Stiller plays two of the characters. But what's funny is that one of the characters is a gay leather daddy.
That's the Bob Odenkirk one. He's like, I'm just going to be a gay leather daddy. It doesn't make any sense, but I'm just going to go for it.
There's one cop who's a marionette. It's all done with marionettes.
Aaron, he remembered watching this show and he was like, oh, Oliver Stone Land. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And then I also liked the Die Hard parody.
And then history cops would show up. It was cops, but they'd be in Salem, Massachusetts, or they'd be in ancient Egypt when Moses is about to part the Red Seas. There's also too many cameos. Todd Bridges and Gary Coleman and the guy who played Scotty on Star Trek. And
there was Casey Kasem. There was Alex Karras, who was the dad from Webster.
Run DMC. Taylor Negron.
Yep, Taylor Negron, baby. It can't be a 90s show without Taylor Negron showing up.
Dweezil Zappa did the music. That's on my list for most 90s.
Anything involving Dweezil Zappa is super 90s.
Skank was a recurring one that was actually pretty funny.
That reminded me of, do you remember that show on, I think it was the WB? It was called Unhappily Ever After.
Yes. Wasn't Nikki Cox in that?
Nikki Cox was on it, and it was a crass, dirty, stuffed animal that talked only to the main character guy.
I thought it was more like Alf. It was like Alf, but he's a dirty sock puppet. I didn't watch it all. I gave up after 9. 7, 8, and 9 were pretty hard to get through.
This stuns me. You were so in.
I think it started out stronger. It seemed like it kind of lost momentum.
Lost steam,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
It was really funny, episode 9, when instead of saying coffee shop, they call it a coffee house. Janeane hangs out in coffee houses.
She's a hipster because she hangs out at a coffee house. Most of the stuff with Janeane was in those weird interstitial parts where they're just talking to the camera. They're just like, hey, here's my guest, or hey, we're shooting on Melrose this week because every show is on Melrose now on Fox. And you're like, okay. It just seemed like that stuff was not written at all, because whatever Janeane was doing, it didn't seem rehearsed.
No, it seemed really awkward.
She was talking over him in weird ways, and it just seemed really awkward. There was this extremely weird one where Ben Stiller's like, the fans have been asking, Janeane, what if I told you that we want to see you naked? And she says, well, then I'd call you a chubby chaser. And then he's like, Janeane, you're not chubby. And then she's like, I don't like that word. And then runs off. It was so weird. It reminded me of her classic starring role in The Truth About Cats and Dogs, which I loved as a kid. But even as a kid, I was confused by, because the entire premise of the movie is based around how she's basically ugly and Uma Thurman's hot. And I never understood it. Janeane Garofalo was an idol of mine, a sassy brunette. Like
the opposite of a Betty Davis situation. Telling you she's ugly, you don't think she is. She's as ugly as she could be and be in that role.
It made me feel bad about myself. If
I remember that movie had like a phone sex scene. It was so...
It's like cyber sex.
Digital Get Down by NSYNC. Digital Get Down.
Ew.
Just you and me.
It's so gross. The things that we had to resort to in the 90s.
It's quaint now.
You could just FaceTime someone. You can get actual video.
This is all available on YouTube. It's very, very 90s. There's lots of blazers. There's lots of grunge.
Reality Bites was, I think, the next on the docket for Ben Stiller. That was 1994. This was 1992. So Ben Stiller, Bob Odenkirk, Janeane Garofalo, Andy Dick are the cast. This was a stepping stone for everybody. Judd Apatow does seem to be a star maker in that way. Even the first show he's done, everyone in the cast became a superstar. Same with Freaks and Geeks. That only lasted a year, and everyone in that cast is someone you still know now. He's got that going for him. I did like in the first episode, they're walking through the studio lot, and they're like, oh yeah, this studio is where they filmed this big hit show. This studio is where they filmed this big hit show. Where are we filming? Oh, it's a place called the Morgue. It's where the Dennis Miller Show and Fish Police and Cop Rock filmed. And I was like, well, yeah, that's the Sliders and Wings wing. It turned out all of our favorites.
I just thought it was so funny that so many of the shows that we've discussed in this podcast were parodied on this.
Mark DiCarlo was on a couple episodes.
Ben Stiller was playing Mark DiCarlo, but then Mark DiCarlo came on later in episode 7 or 8.
Wow.
I actually thought in episode 9, the Woody Allen's Bride of Frankenstein was pretty funny.
Oh, that was good. I put a check mark next to that one too. That's super 90s as well. Just a straight up Woody Allen parody. Everyone had a Woody Allen impression in the 90s.
Oh, I'm now reading here that David Cross was a writer on this.
He showed up in a very late episode.
Okay.
He looked very young, but still fully bald. He went bald very young. My final judgment for the show is it's good. You're not going to hate yourself for watching it, but there's nothing really about it that stands out particularly where you're just like, I gotta watch that. There just wasn't enough cast members, honestly. And Ben Stiller is a great performer, but I don't want to see every sketch be an impression.
I guess maybe I feel like I was excited to watch it, and then the more I watched it, the more I saw the fault lines. Not that I could have done any better or anything.
He's doing fine.
He's okay. I don't have to worry about him.
He's doing fine. You don't have to worry about Ben Stiller.
I think of a Mad Magazine. I was thinking Being Silly show.
So I have 2. Ben Stiller blows.
Oh.
And then this, I have to credit to Aaron, who is just a genius.
Yeah.
He's a genius at Mad Magazine titles.
How about he just does it every week?
I know. Yeah.
Why am I killing myself here?
The Ben Still Not Funny show.
Those are both great.
I really liked it. The Ben Still Not Funny show. Oh, I wanted to bring up one thing before we moved on to our next segment. I think the first sketch of the whole show is a U2 parody. Ben Stiller playing Bono, a behind the music type of thing. And it reminded me of a very memorable St. Patrick's Day I spent in Boston, where I went to the St. Patrick's Day parade in Southie, which, contrary to popular belief, that Boston accent isn't a citywide phenomenon. It's mostly concentrated in Southie, or like the poor parts of Boston, basically. So we went to Southie, and that was just such an experience. Everyone was so wasted. 10-year-olds walking around with beers. Everyone's yelling at each other. And we're watching the parade, and one of the floats was a all little person cover band for U2, and they were called You One Half.
The first time I got an iPhone, it just came loaded with the latest U2 album.
That happened to everybody. I think people sued over that. No one consented to getting that album, and it was a huge problem.
I like the guy. There's a guy who was almost like a 5th cast member because he was in so many sketches. Character actor John F. O'Donoghue, but it was super confusing because his voice sounds exactly like Colin Quinn. But this guy used to be a police officer.
No way.
He became an actor. Yeah.
It took me more episodes than I would like to admit to realize that it was a totally different guy. And then confusingly, they had Colin Quinn on as a guest. Write a sketch about that. Put these 2 guys in the same sketch together so we know that they're different people.
Nothing really for Accent Corner.
The only thing that I was thinking about for Accent Corner was we could rate Ben Stiller's impressions. Obviously, Tom Cruise is top.
The Bruce Willis one wasn't really.
That was mostly makeup. It looked good though. Whoever did the makeup for that sketch nailed the configuration of Bruce Willis's face.
I would say none of these really blow me away.
No. Yeah, that's another problem, is that it's a show that's over reliant on very so-so.
I mean, my favorite one is Odenkirk doing Charles Manson. I don't know. It's not like he's a Dana Carvey level impressionist or anything.
He's definitely going for it. He's giving it his all, and that's half the battle.
So what's the most 90s?
Oh man, That's a tough one for
There's
this
a
one.
lot.
I think the Gen X self-deprecating vibe. Let me just say what I think is the most random sketch of the whole series. The one that was a Cape Fear parody, but it was Eddie Munster, Cape Munster.
It does seem like they just love TV and it's all about mixing up 60s TV shows. And there's a Star Trek one where Scotty's there and he's like grilling him with all these annoying questions.
It could have just been a random generator that came up with these premises, pressed a button on a computer and it was like, tick, 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 Cape Fear, the Munsters, and then just do it.
For my most 90s, I'm thinking of aesthetic things like the blazers and the 8, 9, 7, or 6 millimeter style videos.
Janeane Garofalo's Choker.
References to grunge.
I mean, it's a show that can't really translate for a modern audience at all because they are really parodying specific commercials of the era. That would not be funny to someone who did not remember that commercial. That's not really a criticism for the show because, I mean, try watching an old episode of Saturday Night Live. All of that shit is impenetrable. They're talking about news stories where you're like, I don't have enough of what you're talking about to understand what this joke is. What did you think of Rob Morrow's fedora?
Well, when I saw that, I had forgotten that they had been here and then they had left and they had come back because they like kind of came back early 2000s or late 2000s. When I saw Rob Morrow, I was like, oh, I forgot they were wearing them in the 90s. So it comes back every 10 to 15 years. I mean, I thought he looked good actually. He looks way better there than he did on Northern Exposure.
He looks like a dweebus on Northern Exposure.
It's funny because when we did Northern Exposure and you were saying all these awards it got and stuff, and then in the interstitial, Janeane Garofalo was like, that show's amazing.
I know.
It's so great.
I was shocked by that because she can't be serious, right?
Well, he's the guest.
And it really stood out too because that was literally the only thing that she praised through the entire run of the show. She's shitting on everything.
But that was part of the
Nonstop.
gag. The gag
Yeah.
is how
Right.
Ben Stiller had missed out on it.
She had to play along. I'm wondering if behind the scenes there was like a 12-hour argument about her credibility being ruined by saying that she likes Northern Exposure. Because that is a thing that's different about Gen Xers versus millennials and Gen Z is that Gen X, they didn't want to come off as a poser and they also didn't want to sell out, right? And I don't think anyone gives a shit about that stuff anymore, you know? Literally everyone's a poser now. You're developing a brand for yourself.
That's what Reality Bites was about.
And people love selling out now. They love it. They're like, let me get those ad dollars.
It was fun to watch it anyway.
It was.
Even though I couldn't get through it all. Did I miss anything good in the last 3 episodes?
Marky Mark showed up. Howie Mandel cameoed. Oh, there was a funny one where it's a group of 3 guys who are trying to make it as backup singers. And it's all about discrimination because everywhere they go, they're discriminated against because they're guys. And they're wearing these very tight biker shorts and they're wearing these sequined vests with no shirt on underneath. It's very funny. Just a lot of, we're gonna sue you. We've got 832 active lawsuits happening right now.
Anyway, what you watching?
What am I watching? We finished watching You. That show is so stupid. Aaron was like, don't tell anyone we watched this. Sorry, too late. It's so stupid.
Is it stupider than American Horror Story? Because that's what I've been watching.
Oh God, that's a tough one.
I dropped it after the 4th season. They came up with a season called Cult, and it was right after Trump was elected, and it was kind of a response to Trump. And I remember trying to watch it and just not working. And so I dropped it for years. And then Nicole started texting me, are you watching AHS? If this was good. And I was like, oh, I guess I could get into it again. So of course I binge watched the last season and then jumped a couple seasons. It's very frustrating to watch something that aired a few years ago. Then you have no one to ask. I'm on Reddit being like, hey, I know this aired 5 years ago, but I have some questions.
I remember there's a good Jim Gaffigan bit where he talks about seeing the movie Heat like 8 years after it came out. I just want to talk about it.
Yeah, they're like, get away, you loser. That movie came out like 20 years ago. But American Horror Story is just a show that begs for, you need someone else to share it with because it's just so frustrating and like so many things never make any sense and like the endings are terrible. I am now embarrassingly standing this guy that is on it, who's an Australian actor who I'd never seen before. I think he's actually mainly a model, but he's a really good actor. And his name is Cody Fern.
Oh, I know who that is. Yeah. I have only seen him in the American Crime Story Versace season.
Yeah. So he must have done that and then got on Ryan's good side and moved on over to AHS.
He was great in that Versace show. That entire show was very good.
But my main problem with American Horror Story is that you have primarily all the older actors are grade A, excellent, and then all the young actors are garbage. They're all from nepotism. Kaya Gerber is in it now.
Ooh, really?
Horrible. She was in the latest season. Billy Lord, who's Carrie Fisher's daughter, who, bless her heart, but
bless her.
She can do funny stuff kind of, but don't ask her to do anything serious. But he just hires the randomest people. Billy Eichner is in it now.
He's been on it for a while.
Leslie Grossman is also incredibly bad. Since I just saw a community theater performance last night, I should amend that. They're not bad, because bad was what I saw last night.
I love how much community theater that you are ingesting.
Well, I've only done 2, but I've only lived here for 2 months. So this is a community theater that I was going to audition for and I got scared. And so I didn't do it. And now that I saw what I saw last night, I was like, I probably should have gone ahead.
What was the show?
It's called Murder on the Nile. It's a Hercule Poirot. And I've read every single Hercule Poirot book. So that's why I wanted to see it. And I got up there and I started watching it. And goddamn it, Hercule Poirot is not in it.
What?
It turns out that when she adapted it for the stage, she took him out because she thought he was a distraction. But he's in the movie that's coming out.
Did you see the Kenneth Branagh Murder on the Orient Express?
Yes.
I did not like it. Way too many visual effects for me. A lot of sweeping camera moves. And
I remember having to watch it with subtitles because I couldn't understand what he was saying.
And it's real cheesy, I think, the way it ends. He gets like a letter or something and it's like, there's trouble on the Nile. You're throwing in something for the fans, but it is so stupid.
But it really just blows my mind, these American Horror Stories seasons where they start off amazing. You're intrigued. The set design is great. What's going on? And then every single season they just go, off a cliff.
Have you ever seen that meme that's a drawing of a horse and the first part of it is really detailed and wonderfully rendered and then it just gets shittier and shittier and by the tail it's just a stick figure? I remember one time the text on it was every Ryan Murphy show.
They're addicted though. I mean, everyone does seem like they're having a good time. Sarah Paulson is on it. I mean, she's like blow your mind incredible. But what's it like for her acting against Billy Lord? What is she saying to her friends when she goes home at night?
I was at a party with Sarah Paulson once. It was when I was in Toronto. It was the 10 Years a Slave promo tour. She was having so much fun. She was drinking champagne and she was just like laughing so loudly. I was like, this lady's fun. We ended up speaking briefly because we were outside on a patio. There was a guy who was trying to get around people to get inside, and he stepped into what he thought was a little wading pool, but it was actually like 6 feet of water deep. And he stepped into it and just completely submerged. He splashed. And both me and her just started laughing really hard. She grabbed my shoulder and we were just laughing together as this guy pulled himself out of the water. And for that one little moment, I will love her forever. You can't talk badly about Sarah Paulson. She's pretty cool.
Can't imagine having that kind of ability where you could just take any garbage material and just sell the hell out of it.
I want to see the new American Crime impeachment. She's playing Linda Tripp.
Well, eventually I'll run out of American Horror Stories to watch.
I can't do it. You is trash, but there's just something about a Ryan Murphy show that just grates on me. Maybe I'll just watch clips. That's how I can enjoy a Ryan Murphy show. Just watch clips. Treat it as if there is no continuity, because I don't think Ryan Murphy does. I think he just thinks this will be a cool scene. A Ryan Murphy show is like an exquisite corpse.
He wrote that and Brad Falchuk wrote that, and then they mashed together. And they're like,
and then,
this is fine.
There's just something about the way that all of these really dramatic incidents happen so much, and he doesn't give characters enough time to, I don't know, even process things that have happened. And also it seems like the characters don't usually change as a result to these really horrifying things. And I think that's what ends up being so frustrating. You're just like, well, what the fuck? Like, how am I supposed to care about what happens to this character when they don't even seem to care?
The American Horror Story is basically about shocking and surprising you. You're like, what the heck? Where are they going with this? I mean, that's the whole thing. Where is this going?
The answer is always, it's going nowhere.
But if I may talk about the craft of acting for a moment. So
Please do.
So I watched the play last night with a friend of mine who has been an actress, professional and non-professional. Went to school for acting, and we also both agreed that acting wasn't good. But I said, I feel so bad for these people because if this was a TV show, like Law and Order, film for TV, you could literally just be sitting in a chair and doing all your acting. But then when you're on the stage, you have to do something with your body and you're standing up in front of people. And it feels weird to just stand there with your hands by your side, saying all these dramatic lines. It's like twice the work. And then there's this one character who, she was like a chicken head. Her head was just moving constantly. I was trying to say, what is that? Do you feel like if she just moved half as much, it would have been better? And she said, what she was doing was called indicating. So when you are a newbie actor and you want to show all the emotions your character's feeling, but you don't have the confidence that you can show them subtly, you over-indicate. She was over-indicating with her body, moving it constantly to show distress, but a trained actress would
rein it in a little.
Subtly, yeah.
That is interesting. That's an interesting fact.
I guess if you reach the point where you were confident that you were conveying what you wanted to convey, you just feel calm, right? You'd be on the stage and you'd kind of be standing more naturally.
With acting, I think a lot of people are like, acting, they're not really doing anything. Acting's easy. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know if it's that easy. Yeah, I think it's pretty hard actually to be able to do all of these things and convey these feelings and do all of that work and it not look crazy. You're not overacting, your eyes aren't going crazy, you're not gesturing all over the place, you're not getting nervous. That's what I would be like. Talk too fast or
unnatural. You take a line that you say every day 10 times a day, but then you have to say it in a natural way and then it comes out weird.
There's just so much stuff that you're trying to remember too. I don't think I have room enough in my brain. My brain is full already with 90s stuff. It just pushes everything out.
I'm still having trouble remembering names and stuff. And I was like, maybe I'm just reached an age where I've crammed so much stuff in that there's just no space anymore.
And I also do think that your brain decides what is important to you and what isn't. And some things they're like, that can go. You don't really need that. You don't
But
really.
the theme song to the Gummy Bears, hold on to it. Never let it go.
That song's a jam. I mean, I'll never forget that song either.
Okay, cool. Well, this was fun. This has been Sliders and Wings.
Yes.
Now with an Instagram account.
Sliders and Wings Pod.
Because I guess there's someone else who's Sliders and Wings.
Did you go to it and see what's going on there? Is it for appetizers?
Well, I went to go just take the name and it said that name already in use.
You can also email us at slidersandwings@gmail.com.
And see us on YouTube. All right. Well, good night, Val.
Good night, Rachel.
Bye.